For most of human history, diplomacy has meant people in rooms. Carefully chosen words, long dinners, back-channel messages, and the slow, deliberate crafting of agreements. But the world is moving into something different, an intelligence economy, where influence is shaped not only by armies, money, or even alliances, but by data, models, and machine-driven insight. And that's where a new form of statecraft is emerging. AI diplomacy. The use of artificial intelligence, intelligence platforms, and cross-border data ecosystems to negotiate, coordinate, influence, and sometimes even outpace rivals. Today, we're asking a big question: as AI becomes embedded in how nations understand the world and each other, what happens to negotiation itself? Who gains leverage, who loses it, and what does global cooperation look like when the speed of decision-making accelerates? Welcome to a roundtable conversation on AI diplomacy, how nations negotiate in the intelligence economy. You're listening to the B.I channel, where data meets decisions. I'm your host, Soren Hale. Today's episode sits right at the intersection of geopolitics, emerging technology, and global strategy. We're going to unpack what AI diplomacy actually is, the pillars it rests on, how different regions are approaching it, the risks that come with it, and where this could be headed in the next decade. And because this topic is too big for one voice, we've got a global panel with us. Nakel is a strategist and the founder of the B.I channel. Welcome back.
Always good to be here, Soren. And I'll say it up front. This shift is not incremental. AI diplomacy changes the rules of negotiation, not just the tools.
Dr. Zhou is our APAC transformation expert. Great to have you.
Thank you, Soren. In APAC, you can already see the foundations being built, shared platforms, faster decision loops, and AI becoming part of cross-border coordination.
Maria is a governance leader focused on LATAM dynamics. Maria, welcome.
Happy to join. Diplomacy used to be dominated by official statements and private conversations. Now it's also shaped by data rights, digital infrastructure, and who gets to define the rules of information flow.
Jonas is a European ethics specialist, and I'm very glad you're here for this one.
Likewise. AI diplomacy is powerful, but power without guardrails quickly becomes destabilizing. The ethical and legal dimension isn't a side topic, it's central.
And Aiden is a futurist and emerging tech analyst. Aiden, welcome back.
Always a pleasure. The big story for me is that negotiation is becoming a kind of compute problem. That's going to change who can move first, who can persuade, and what strength looks like.
All right. Let's build a shared definition first, because AI diplomacy can sound like a headline that means everything and nothing. When we say AI diplomacy, what are we actually talking about? Nakel, start us off.
I treat it as diplomacy augmented by machine intelligence. In practice, it means governments using AI to gather signals, make sense of complex environments, and shape negotiation strategies. Sometimes it's decision support, models that help you forecast outcomes or find trade-offs. Sometimes it's coordination, AI systems that align multiple agencies or countries in a crisis. And sometimes it's influence, using data ecosystems and intelligent platforms to steadily set the terms of engagement.
Maria, does that match how you see it?
Yes, and I'd add a governance layer. AI diplomacy isn't just about using AI during negotiations, it's also about negotiating AI itself. Think of cross-border data agreements, rules around data localization, shared standards for algorithmic accountability, or regional frameworks for AI procurement. In many cases, the diplomatic object is the digital infrastructure that countries depend on.
Dr. Zhou, where does APAC's angle fit in?
One big element is simulation and real-time situational awareness. AI models can run scenarios quickly. If we impose a tariff, how does it ripple through supply chains? If shipping routes shift, what happens to energy prices? If a dispute escalates, what are the likely responses across multiple actors? That puts diplomats and leaders in a different posture. You don't walk into a room with just talking points, you walk in with a probabilistic map of consequences.
Jonas, you've argued that AI diplomacy also includes a moral and regulatory framework. Explain that.
Because the moment AI influences diplomacy, we're no longer just negotiating outcomes, we're negotiating legitimacy. If one side uses opaque models and the other side doesn't know what assumptions are embedded, is that fair? If an algorithm systematically undervalues certain risks, or overstates threats, how do we prevent it from nudging policy toward escalation? So yes, AI diplomacy includes the treaties and standards that govern AI use in the international arena, transparency norms, auditability, accountability, and protections against discrimination.
Aiden, bring it home for the listener. What's the plain language version?
Plain language. Diplomats are getting AI co-pilots. Those co-pilots can translate, summarize, detect talking points, map alliances, estimate risks, and help craft responses quickly. And then there's the platform layer, shared intelligence systems, or data-sharing frameworks that shape what countries can even see. So AI diplomacy isn't robots replacing diplomats. It's diplomats negotiating in an environment where intelligence is faster, richer, and sometimes unevenly distributed.
That's a key point, augmentation, not replacement, at least for now. Let's turn to structure. If AI diplomacy is becoming a real discipline, what are its core building blocks? I want to break this into 4 pillars and have each of you poke at them. Pillar 1, intelligence-driven negotiation. Nakel, what does that look like in practice?
Think of it as moving from instincts to instrumentation. In classic diplomacy, you read the room. In intelligence-driven negotiation, you read the room and the data trail, economic indicators, shipping flows, satellite imagery, sentiment analysis, cyber signals, financial networks. AI helps you identify leverage points and constraints. It can flag which concessions are politically impossible for the other side, which messages will resonate with their domestic audience, and which timeline pressures they're under. It also helps with option discovery. It can surface compromises humans might not notice because we're locked into traditional frames.
Maria, I can almost hear critics saying, that's manipulation. Is it?
It can be, and that's why governance matters. But I'd separate 2 things. There's analytical intelligence, understanding interests, constraints, and outcomes. And then there's persuasive engineering, using profiling and micro-targeted narratives to steer behavior. Diplomacy has always involved persuasion, but AI scales it and makes it more precise. That raises concerns about consent, sovereignty, and democratic accountability, especially when diplomatic messaging blends into information operations.
Dr. Zhou, what changes when negotiation becomes data instrumented?
Speed and confidence change. When you have models updating in near real time, you can revise your position quickly. You can test proposals on the fly, anticipate second-order effects, and avoid accidental self-harm. But it also creates a temptation. If the model looks confident, leaders may trust it too much. We've seen that in other domains. In diplomacy, overconfidence can be dangerous.
Jonas, what's your ethical pressure point here?
A model is not neutral. Negotiation analytics can embed bias in 2 ways. First, through data, which sources count as ground truth. Second, through objectives. What does the model optimize for? Stability, growth, security, election outcomes. If you measure the wrong things, or optimize for the wrong goal, you can create a diplomatic strategy that appears rational but is morally distorted.
Aiden, bring us to Pillar 2, cross-border data treaties. Why is data suddenly diplomatic territory?
Because data is the raw material of intelligence in AI. If your companies can't move data across borders, your models get weaker. If your public sector can't share data during crises, coordination fails. If your citizens' data is housed on infrastructure controlled by another jurisdiction, you may lose leverage. So countries are negotiating questions like, where can data live, who can process it, what counts as sensitive, what must stay local, what can be shared, and under what safeguards. And it's not just privacy. It's industrial policy. It's security. It's economic competitiveness.
Maria, LATAM has been vocal about sovereignty. How does that show up in data diplomacy?
A lot of it is about avoiding dependency. If your health, finance, or identity systems run on foreign platforms, you're exposed to pricing power, to surveillance risk, to service disruptions, to political pressure. So regional discussions are increasingly about data sovereignty, who owns and controls national datasets, how to structure regional cloud capacity, and how to negotiate with big technology providers. But there's a trade-off. Too much localization can limit innovation and regional integration. The challenge is designing agreements that protect rights and security without isolating economies.
Pillar 3, AI-assisted crisis coordination. Dr. Zhou, paint a picture for listeners. What does this look like during a real crisis?
Imagine a typhoon hitting multiple countries, disrupting ports, power grids, and logistics networks. An AI-assisted system can fuse weather models, infrastructure status, shipping data, hospital capacity, and satellite images to suggest priorities, which routes to reopen first, where to position supplies, how to allocate energy. Now expand that to pandemics, supply chain shocks, or sudden financial stress. The coordination problem is huge. AI helps create a shared operational picture. But the diplomatic part is that multiple governments must trust the data, trust the system, and agree on action. That's the hard part.
Nakhil, what's the intelligence economy version of crisis coordination?
It's when coordination itself becomes a strategic asset. If you can coordinate faster than others, you recover faster, your markets stabilize sooner, and your credibility rises. But it also means that shared platforms, shared dashboards, shared models become strategic infrastructure. Who controls them? Who updates them? Who gets access during the most sensitive moments? Those are diplomatic questions dressed up as technical logistics.
Jonas, is there an ethics dimension in crisis coordination beyond the obvious?
Yes. Crisis systems can normalize surveillance. When governments build high-resolution visibility into movement, health signals, financial behavior, or communications to manage emergencies, the question is, does it roll back afterward? Internationally, if one country shares sensitive crisis data with another, what are the guarantees it won't be repurposed later for intelligence advantage? The ethics of crisis coordination includes retention, consent, scope limitation, and reciprocity.
Pillar 4, ethical and regulatory diplomacy. Jonas, set the stage.
We are entering an era where AI standards are like trade standards. If you export a regulatory model, rules for risk classification, explainability, audits, documentation, you influence how other countries build systems. That becomes a diplomatic tool. Ethical and regulatory diplomacy includes negotiating treaties on responsible AI, but also mutual recognition agreements, cross-border certification, and safety protocols for high-risk models. In some sense, ethics becomes geopolitics. Whoever defines responsible shapes global markets and global trust.
Aiden, do you see ethics as soft power?
Absolutely. If your AI ecosystem is trusted, because it's safer, more transparent, more accountable, other nations and companies will integrate with you. That creates alliances by default. But if a country becomes known for reckless deployment, you'll see restrictions, sanctions, risk-based exclusions from data sharing, and limits on collaboration. So yes, ethical leadership can translate into real strategic advantage.
Now let's get into the real tension, power. How does AI change the balance of diplomatic power? If you had to explain this to someone who thinks diplomacy is still just speeches, handshakes, and treaties, what would you say? Aiden, start.
Power tilts toward whoever has better intelligence loops. Think of diplomacy like chess, but the board keeps changing. AI helps you keep up with the changing board faster than your opponent. If you can detect shifts earlier, economic stress, public sentiment, military movement, supply disruptions, you can negotiate from a position of foresight. And foresight is a form of leverage. Also, the ability to generate and evaluate options quickly matters. If it takes you 2 weeks to assess a proposal, and it takes someone else 2 hours, you don't control the tempo anymore.
Dr. Zhou, you mentioned speed and clarity earlier. Is speed always good in diplomacy?
Not always. Speed helps in crises and fast-moving negotiations. But diplomacy also relies on ambiguity at times, on deliberate pacing, on signaling through delays, on quietly building consensus. AI can compress timelines. That can reduce misunderstandings, but it can also reduce the space for human judgment and relationship building. And there's another factor: speed is uneven. Some countries will operate at machine tempo, others at bureaucratic tempo. That mismatch itself creates asymmetry.
Maria, where does data richness fit into power?
Data-rich countries and data-rich companies gain negotiating advantage. If your economy produces high-quality data at scale, and you have the capacity to process it, you can price risk better, anticipate shocks, and design stronger trade positions. Meanwhile, countries with fragmented data infrastructure may find themselves negotiating in the dark, relying on external analytics. And when you rely on external analytics, you start negotiating inside someone else's model of the world.
Jonas, you've said ethical leadership becomes a diplomatic asset. Some listeners might think that sounds idealistic. Is it actually practical?
It's practical because trust is an economic asset. If partners believe your systems are safe and lawful, they will share data, co-develop technologies, integrate supply chains, and coordinate security. If they don't trust you, they may wall off data, restrict technology transfer, and treat collaboration as a risk. Ethics becomes practical when it reduces friction and increases predictability.
Nakhil, you said earlier this is a rule change, not just a tool change. What's the biggest shift in how negotiation happens?
Pre-negotiation preparation becomes almost as important as the negotiation itself. If you can run simulation engines, game out scenarios, estimate red lines, test messaging, explore coalition options, you're no longer walking into the room to find out. You're walking in with a strategy that has been stress tested. It's like having a wind tunnel for diplomacy. But here's the twist. If both sides have advanced simulation, the negotiation becomes a contest between models, whose assumptions about human behavior, economics, and politics are more accurate. That's a new frontier.
Let's talk regions, because AI diplomacy won't look the same everywhere. Dr. Zhou, what stands out in APAC's approach?
APAC is experimenting with what I'd call intelligence corridors. These are cross-border arrangements that make trade, logistics, and coordination smoother through shared data standards and shared platforms. It's very pragmatic: reduce friction, increase resilience, improve forecasting. There's also strong momentum around public-private alignment, governments working with major platforms and industries to build national AI capacity. But APAC is diverse. Some countries emphasize innovation speed, others emphasize stability and control. That diversity shapes collaboration.
Jonas, what's distinct about Europe?
Europe sees regulation not as a brake, but as a strategic export. The European approach often centers on rights, transparency, and accountability. When those standards are adopted or mirrored abroad, they shape global markets. Europe also focuses on institutional legitimacy, ensuring AI use is anchored in law, oversight, and human rights. There's a downside: if compliance burdens become too heavy, innovation can slow. But Europe's view is that trust and stability are competitive advantages in their own right.
Aiden, what about North America?
In North America, especially the U.S., AI diplomacy often shows up through alliance coordination and security intelligence. You see investment in AI for defense, for threat detection, for coordination among partners. There's also a strong role for private sector innovation, major labs, cloud providers, and data platforms. That creates power, but also raises governance questions. What happens when critical diplomatic capabilities depend on privately controlled systems? How do allies align when the platform layer is commercial? It's a unique mix of state strategy and market-driven technology.
Maria, zoom in on LATAM. What's emerging there?
Two trends: sovereignty negotiations and capacity building. First, many countries are asking, how do we protect our citizens' data and still integrate into global digital trade? That leads to regional discussions about data protection alignment, digital identity standards, and cloud governance. Second, there's a focus on building institutions that can actually negotiate these issues: digital ministries, AI strategies, regulatory sandboxes, and cross-border cooperation. The challenge is bargaining power. Negotiating with large platforms or major powers requires technical expertise and regional coordination, otherwise you negotiate one-on-one and lose leverage.
Nakhil, you had a note about Africa in the original outline, intelligence partnerships to leapfrog legacy systems. Expand that.
Africa has an opportunity to skip certain legacy layers, but the path isn't automatic. On one hand, newer digital infrastructure can be built with modern standards, cloud-native systems, mobile-first public services, AI-enabled agriculture and logistics. On the other hand, AI diplomacy for many African nations will hinge on negotiating fair partnerships. Access to compute, access to training resources, equitable data arrangements, and safeguards against extractive models. If partnerships are structured well, you can build regional intelligence capacity and reduce dependency. If they're structured poorly, you end up exporting raw data and importing expensive intelligence.
Let's move into the darker side, because every time we build new capability, we introduce new risk. What are the biggest risks of AI diplomacy? Jonas, start with bias.
Bias can infect diplomatic outcomes quietly. If models trained on historical data absorb patterns of inequality or conflict framing, they can treat certain groups, regions, or governments as inherently unstable or threatening. Then, those outputs influence policy, harsher negotiation stances, reduced cooperation, increased surveillance. And because the model output looks technical, it can be hard to challenge. People defer to it. In diplomacy, that's dangerous because a biased assumption can become a self-fulfilling prophecy.
Maria, you raised unequal access. What does inequality look like here?
It looks like two speeds of diplomacy. Countries with strong compute, strong data pipelines, and advanced analytic capacity can negotiate with deeper insight and faster iteration. Countries without that capacity may depend on external vendors or allied intelligence. That dependence shifts autonomy. It can also shape what issues they prioritize because they can't see the full landscape. And inequality isn't just between countries. It can show up within countries, where some agencies have advanced tools and others operate with outdated systems, creating internal coordination failures.
Dr. Zhou, you talked earlier about misinterpretation and escalation. Walk us through the risk.
AI systems can detect signals, but they can also overinterpret them. If a model flags an unusual troop movement or a spike in certain communications, the system might rate it as high risk. Leaders may react quickly. If the signal was benign, or if the data was incomplete, that reaction can trigger escalation. The bigger problem is mutual acceleration. One side speeds up because their system tells them to, the other side sees that speed up and assumes hostile intent. In a high-stakes environment, that feedback loop can spin out.
Aiden, misinformation, how does AI change the game diplomatically?
AI makes deception scalable. You can generate convincing narratives, fake audio, synthetic documents, and targeted content at low cost. That can be used to confuse publics, undermine leaders, fracture alliances, or create pretext for action. And here's the diplomatic twist. You may not be able to prove attribution quickly. So governments face a dilemma: respond fast and risk being wrong, or respond slowly and look weak. Also, misinformation can be used within negotiations, leaks, draft treaties that were never real, fake statements. It erodes the shared reality that diplomacy relies on.
Nakhil, last risk from the outline, loss of sovereignty through reliance on foreign platforms. Unpack that.
If your diplomatic intelligence runs on someone else's infrastructure, you inherit their constraints. That could mean technical constraints, access limits, uptime, pricing, but also strategic constraints. Data residency requirements, legal exposure to another jurisdiction, or subtle dependency where switching costs become massive. It's similar to energy dependence. You might not notice it day to day, but in a crisis it becomes leverage. So sovereignty in the intelligence economy includes compute sovereignty, cloud sovereignty, and model sovereignty, not necessarily building everything yourself, but ensuring you have real control and fallback options.
I want to bring us into a more practical scenario. Imagine two countries negotiating a trade agreement, and both sides are using AI systems to prepare and advise. What changes in the room? What looks different from the classic view of diplomacy? Aiden, go.
The room becomes multi-layered. You still have people speaking, but behind them you have real-time analytics. What concessions are likely acceptable, how markets might respond, how domestic audiences might react. You might also see rapid drafting and redrafting of text because AI can help propose language variants that satisfy constraints. And the pace changes. Negotiations that used to pause for days while teams analyzed options can compress into hours.
Maria, does that make negotiations better or more brittle?
Both. Better because it can surface win-wins and reduce accidental harm. More brittle because faster drafting can hide political landmines. Also, diplomatic agreements aren't just logic puzzles, they carry symbolism. The phrasing matters, the sequencing matters, and the human relationships matter. If AI optimizes for technical coherence but misses symbolic meaning, you can create an agreement that looks perfect and fails politically.
Jonas, what do you worry about most in that scenario?
Accountability. If a negotiation team relies heavily on AI recommendations and later the agreement causes harm, economic instability, rights violations, conflict escalation, who is responsible? You can't put responsibility on the model. You can't say, the system suggested it. So governments need clear governance, documentation of model use, decision logs, independent review, and a culture where humans can override systems without being punished for questioning them.
Dr. Zhou, do you foresee countries refusing to negotiate unless certain AI conditions are met? Almost like we need secure channels, but now for models.
Yes. I think we'll see model hygiene become part of diplomatic protocol. Countries may ask, are your summaries generated by a secure system? Are you recording and processing discussions in a way that violates confidentiality? Are you using tools that might be trained on sensitive inputs? Just like we have secure rooms and classified networks, we may see secure AI environments for negotiation support. And there may be disputes about what tools are acceptable.
Nakhil, if you were advising a small or mid-sized nation, what's the top strategic advice in this world?
Build negotiating capacity in 3 layers. First, data readiness. Get your national datasets organized, governed, and usable. Second, compute and platform strategy. You don't have to own everything, but you must avoid single points of failure and you must understand your dependencies. Third, talent and institutions. Diplomats need technical literacy, and technical teams need geopolitical literacy. The best outcomes happen when those groups speak the same language, and then collaborate regionally. In the intelligence economy, coalitions can pool capacity.
Let's shift to what the future could look like. We've covered definitions, pillars, power, regions, risks. Now, what's next? What does AI-driven global cooperation look like if it goes well? Nakhil, start with peace and negotiation.
If it goes well, AI becomes an instrument for de-escalation. You could see AI-mediated peace negotiations where models help identify credible pathways, verify compliance with satellite and open-source intelligence, and propose phased confidence-building steps. The key is not that AI solves conflict, but that it expands the option space and reduces uncertainty. However, success depends on trust in the system. If either side believes the tools are biased or manipulated, it collapses.
Maria, you mentioned data sharing alliances earlier. What's the positive version?
A positive future is one where data sharing has clear rules and clear benefits. Think of regional health surveillance that detects outbreaks early while protecting privacy. Or shared climate and disaster data that improves resilience. Or trade data standards that reduce friction for small exporters. But it requires governance that's credible, transparency about what is shared, limits on secondary use, enforcement mechanisms, and benefits that are distributed fairly. Otherwise, data sharing alliance becomes a euphemism for extraction.
Jonas, what does an international AI ethics treaty actually contain? People hear that phrase, but it's abstract.
At minimum, it can include shared definitions and shared red lines. Definitions: what counts as high-risk AI, what counts as unacceptable use, what counts as meaningful human oversight. Red lines could include restrictions on certain autonomous weapons, bans on specific mass surveillance practices, or prohibitions on AI systems that manipulate democratic processes. It can also include verification and auditing cooperation, shared approaches to evaluation, incident reporting, and safety testing. The hardest part is enforcement. But even partial alignment reduces uncertainty and builds trust.
Dr. Zhou, real-time crisis coordination platforms, what's the optimistic trajectory there?
A shared platform that countries can plug into during emergencies, with pre-negotiated protocols. So when a crisis hits, you don't waste precious time debating data formats, access permissions, or who calls whom. You already have a playbook. AI can help allocate resources, forecast second-order effects, and reduce panic through clearer information. But we must design it to prevent misuse. Crisis coordination should not become a backdoor for long-term surveillance or geopolitical pressure.
Aiden, the big one, AI-powered global governance systems. That sounds like science fiction. Where's the line between plausible and far-fetched?
The plausible version is decision support for global institutions. Imagine an international body using AI to detect early signs of famine, monitor supply chain stress, forecast migration pressures, or model emissions pathways. That helps deploy aid earlier and negotiate smarter. The far-fetched version is a centralized AI world government. I don't think that's likely. What I do think is likely, a network of AI systems that shape policy indirectly because they become the default tools for measurement and coordination. In other words, governance by dashboards. Not necessarily evil, but it can become unaccountable if we're not careful.
Before we close, I want each of you to give one practical takeaway. If a listener works in policy, tech, or business, what should they watch for over the next couple of years as a signal that AI diplomacy is accelerating? Nakel?
Watch for countries formalizing national intelligence platforms that connect data across agencies and are explicitly linked to foreign policy. When that happens, diplomacy becomes a data product.
Dr. Zhou?
Watch for regional standards on data exchange and AI interoperability. When standards appear, corridors form. And when corridors form, the strategic map changes.
Maria?
Watch for negotiations that look like trade agreements but are really digital governance agreements, cloud procurement, digital identity, cross-border data rules. That's where sovereignty and economics meet.
Jonas?
Watch for mandatory AI auditing and incident reporting that crosses borders. When countries demand proof of safety and fairness as a condition of partnership, ethics becomes operational.
Aiden?
Watch for secure AI negotiation environments, tools designed for diplomats that are private by design, verifiable, and resistant to data leakage. That will show institutions are taking AI and diplomacy seriously.
AI diplomacy is changing how nations negotiate, cooperate, and compete. It's not just a shiny layer of technology on top of the old system, it's a shift in the mechanics of power. In the intelligence economy, influence increasingly comes from what you can measure, what you can model, and how quickly you can coordinate. But with that power comes risk, bias, inequality, escalation, misinformation, and new forms of dependency. The question isn't whether AI will touch diplomacy. It already has. The question is whether we build the norms, safeguards, and shared standards that keep this new era from becoming more volatile. Thank you to our panel, Nakel, Dr. Zhou, Maria, Jonas, and Aiden. And thank you for listening to the BI channel, where data meets decisions. Until next time.